Please adhere to YouTube selected guidelines before viewing the content of this video. I do not encourage or condone any products, actions, or behaviors shown in this video. All videos are produced in a safe, professional, and controlled environment. Please do not attempt to replicate any actions performed during the video. All actions are performed by professionals.
Alright, so today I'm going to be smoking a cigarette from Sweden for the first time, which, as one may expect, I am looking forward to doing, much more so than not, as I am very curious to find out just how a Swedish cigarette will be based off this one experience at least, and I am very curious to find out whether Swedish cigarettes are something that I'm going to enjoy or not as well. Although, if I had to guess, I'm probably going to have a much better experience than not today, because I've heard some pretty good things about the cigarettes I'm holding in my hand right now. But what is the cigarette I've got on me today? Well, what I'm going to be, smoking and reviewing today is a pack of the John Silver filtered cigarettes from, of course, Sweden, which, from what I can tell at least, are indeed a full-flavored cigarette and are a mid-range cigarette price-wise as well. This pack of cigarettes, from what I can tell at least, cost a maximum of 82 Swedish krona, or around about $8.50 USD. Now, since I'm not from Sweden and have never been to Sweden before, I don't know exactly where that places this pack in the price lineup when compared to other brands on the market within Sweden, but from what I've heard, that means that this brand is around about mid-range. That's just what I've heard, though. I don't know anything for sure I want to acknowledge. Now that I've covered what this pack of cigarettes is, though, I do suppose now I should probably go ahead and cover what John Silver is as a cigarette brand. So what is John Silver? Well, John Silver as a brand was first introduced in 1947 by Tobaksmonopolet, the old Swedish tobacco monopoly, and it was named after the pirate Long John Silver from the book Treasure Island. The brand's first product, an unfiltered American blend cigarette that was inspired by American cigarettes that became popular during World War II, was not a success, not due to any fault of the blend, supposedly a Virginia and Burley tobacco mixture, which is also the blend that is apparently still used today, as John Silver is still an American blend cigarette brand today. But it wasn't any fault of the blend, it wasn't any fault of the mixture that caused John Silver to not succeed with its initial introduction. It was instead supply problems. However, by 1952, the supply problems were fixed, and John Silver cigarettes were quickly relaunched that same year, and by 1958, quickly became the best-selling domestic brand on the market within Sweden. Due to the rise in filtered cigarettes in 1966, John Silver got their own as well. And then, starting in the 1990s, the brand was handed from company to company for some time, eventually landing in the hands of Japan Tobacco International, who still owns and produces them today. From what I can tell, John Silver is one of the more popular domestic brands of cigarettes within Sweden these days, but truly how popular, I don't know, as I'm not actually from Sweden, as, well, what I've said earlier on in the video may imply. But I do know that John Silver as a brand appears to be more iconic and classic than not, and there's a lot of fanfare about the brand online, and so I figure they've got to be worth a go. And so as such, well, due to not only the fact that this brand is an iconic one, but also to the fact that I've heard some pretty good things about John Silver cigarettes as a whole online, I am even more excited to give this pack a go than I was previously. Thank you so much to Carl for having me kind enough to contribute this pack of cigarettes right here to the channel for me to, smoke and make a full review on. I really, really, really do appreciate the contribution, and I am, very excited to give these a go, as I'm sure is obvious by now. Without further ado, let's go ahead and quickly move my piece of paper I've got right here just over to the side so it's not distracting me or anything like that. Just going to go ahead and fold it up real quick and just place it under an external battery I've got out here just so it doesn't blow away in case the wind picks up or anything like that. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and quickly go over the packaging of, the pack I'm holding in my hand right now. Then after that, I'm going to go ahead and get the cellophane all off. I'm going to go ahead and get the pack of cigarettes all opened up, go ahead and let you guys know what the cigarettes inside actually look like, what they feel like, what the quality of them is like, and then after that, I'm going to go ahead and get one of the John Silver cigarettes from Sweden all lit up, and I'm going to go ahead and actually get to smoking a Swedish cigarette for the first time, and I'm going to let y'all know just how these are, what I think of them, and just what my initial impressions of a Swedish cigarette actually are as well. And once I'm done smoking, I'm going to go and give you guys my final thoughts on not only this pack, but also on Swedish cigarettes as a whole, based off this one experience at least. And then after all of that, I'm going to go ahead and give this pack a rating as well. But, as said, first off, we've got to go over the packaging, which is decent. I'm going to just leave it at that. I think the packaging is decent, especially the packaging down here, I think, looks pretty solid. It's not the most insane look by any means, but it's a more basic look that is definitely very easy to spot on the shelf. I definitely do think that the sort of functionality of this packaging is very good. I think this packaging is very recognizable from a distance. Aesthetics-wise, it's nothing insane. It's nothing amazing in my personal opinion, but overall, I do think that this packaging is definitely better than not, both aesthetics-wise and functionality-wise, but my main beef with this packaging isn't actually the design itself. It's the government-mandated warning labels that take up the majority of the packaging, and that's really a shame to see in all honesty. Although I do suppose I should just be thankful that Sweden doesn't use plain packaging quite yet. We can see there is a photographic warning label right here with text up top. Of course, all of the text is in Swedish, and it just reads, "Children of smokers are more likely to smoke," or something along those lines. I translated it before this video, but that's not an exact translation, I do figure. Under that, we can see it just has like a quit smoking website and phone number just right there. And then under that, there's a photo of a child looking at a cigarette being like, "Man, this looks scrumptious. I need a cigarette right now because I'm feeling a little bit stressed out because my mom won't give me the toy I wanted from Walmart." That's what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. This kid be looking a little bit stressed, and he's thinking about having a smoke, and you know what? If I was in that situation, I would have a smoke too. You know, I can't even count on two hands the number of times I was in Walmart, and I was like, "Yo, Mom, can I please get a Matchbox car?" And she was like, "No. You got to get a job for Matchbox cars." And so what did I did? I got a job. I got a job so I could buy Matchbox cars when I was a kid. True lore. It's true. Definitely not fake. I was working underage in the mines to afford my Matchbox cars. It's true. It's true. But we just get that photographic warning label right there of the kid looking at the cigarette and everything like that kind of thing. And then under that, we get to the actual design. We can see there's a dark-ish red over here, almost like a sort of lighter than not wine red, not quite a burgundy, but it's a brighter yet at the same time semi-dark red, I'd have to say. Probably made to be a little bit darker looking with the contrast of the black background over here. But we can see red right there, and separating the red from the black background, there are some silver lines as well. Those silver lines start off a little bit thicker towards the edge, and then they get thinner, going up like that, and same with this one right here. On the black background, it just says John Silver right there, all in white. There's no sort of drop shadow, no sort of shading, no sort of super fancy font or details to the text itself. It just says John Silver, just like it does, with a little bit of a copyright symbol right there. This text is indeed embossed, though, which is something important to mention, and I love embossment, so I am a fan of that. And then in the corner of the pack, in red, it just says, "Since 1947, and then it also says the same thing, I assume, in Swedish as well, just says, "Nuli Sikudus? I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that, I will acknowledge, but we can see there's some tobacco leaves on that design and whatnot kind of thing. So basically they're just trying to say, hey, look, John Silver is a historic brand. It's been around since 1947, and you should buy these cigarettes because they've been around so long. It's a historic brand after all kind of thing. And that's pretty much all there is to the front of the packaging. Overall, I think this design itself is definitely more basic than not aesthetics-wise. I think it works very well functionality-wise. It's quite distinct from a distance. If you know what you're looking for, and even if you don't know what you're looking for, this might be a bit more eye-catching from a distance without a doubt. So I think functionality-wise, this packaging works quite well. However, aesthetics-wise, it is a little bit more basic than not. There's nothing really too much going on, but with the space they are given, honestly, I think it is pretty solid. But that's pretty much all there is to the front of the packaging. Moving on to the back of the packaging, we can see the same warning label taking up the same amount of space. Once again, the photo up here, text right here, and the whole sort of like quit smoking stuff right there. And there's a mosquito on my hand. Go and just shake my hand real quick, try to get the mosquito all off. It's a little bit warmer than not today, and the mosquitoes have come come out because it is not windy at all right now, I will acknowledge. They have been swarming me just a little bit, hence why I am wearing a long sleeve shirt, even though I actually don't really need to be doing so. It's a little bit warmer than not out here. I'm feeling a little bit warm right now, but it's worth it to not get a ton of mosquito bites, and I want to smoke my cigarettes and try a Swedish cigarette for the first time, and it's worth risking getting some mosquito bites to, well, try a Swedish cigarette for the first time, but I can't be risking it too much, hence why I'm wearing this sweater, I will acknowledge. But, as said, just the same old warning label right here, just reformatted just a little bit. Taking a look at the design on the back of the pack, we can see red up here, black down here, a little bit of a silver line once again in the middle right there as well. And that silver line, I am just now noticing as well, I didn't notice this beforehand, but that silver line is actually metallic on both the front and the back. And there's also a little bit of a metallic red right above the silver as well, which definitely does a good job of kind of emphasizing it just a little bit more so than that as well. That's on both the front and the back, and I'm just now noticing that. But we can see, as said, red, black, silver line, just says John Silver right there once again, just a little bit smaller than it was on the front of the pack, of course, simply due to the fact that there's also this label right here that just says that there's plastic in the filter and that you shouldn't litter it because it kills the sea turtles, and I am absolutely in agreement with that. I actually don't mind this being on cigarette packs at all. Like, would I prefer if it maybe didn't take up as much space? Yes, absolutely. I would much rather see the design for the cigarettes, but littering cigarette butts, don't do it. Don't do it. I'm not gonna lie, it's something I used to do, and it's something I shouldn't have been doing, and I'm very glad I don't be littering my cigarette butts today. Cigarette butts are bad for the environment, and if you're gonna litter your cigarettes, litter your unfiltered cigarettes. That's what I'm saying, because that's all biodegradable, you know what I'm saying? That's all biodegradable. They all degrade back into the ground, no issue, because it's just paper and tobacco. The filter itself, that's not particularly biodegradable. Unless you have a biodegradable filter, and then it is biodegradable, but there's really no cigarettes on the American market besides maybe even one that have biodegradable filters. But even then, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, not a lot of biodegradable filters, I'm not gonna lie. Unfiltered cigarettes are the way to go if you don't want to throw your cigarettes away. They really are. But, not hating on this by any means, I will acknowledge I am all for not littering your cigarette butts, that is for sure. As said, just says John Silver right there, same exact font and whatnot. This also has embossment as well, which I do appreciate, and that's pretty much all there is to the back of the pack. Moving on to this side of the pack, we can see we get another warning label right there in Swedish. Just says smoking kills in Swedish, as we can see. And then we can see the barcode itself. Now, this is something that's really interesting to me. The barcode itself is not actually printed onto the box, which is the norm in, I think, every country I've ever been to. Every country I've ever tried cigarettes from has had the barcode printed on the box itself. Not with this pack, though. It's actually on the cellophane, and then there's a, well, design under the barcode. I assume they're doing that to not have to take up as much space on the box so they can have more branding and whatnot kind of thing, but I'm not exactly sure. That's just my personal guess, but very, very, very interesting nonetheless, I will acknowledge. I'm gonna have to cover the design right under this barcode after I get the cellophane all off. Moving on to the other side, we can see that there is a tax stamp covering up the design on this side as well. I'm not gonna be getting the tax stamp off because that would be very hard because it's glued on there, but I'm assuming it says something along the lines of like John Silver or something like that kind of thing. And we can see there's a little bit of red right there as well, and another warning label as well, which just says that cigarette smoke contains over 70 cancer-causing substances. Don't care, it's not gonna stop me from smoking, let me tell y'all what. And yep, that's all there is to this side of the pack. Moving on to the top of the pack, we can see pretty much the exact same design we saw on the front of the pack, just a little bit in a different format. Red over here, silver lines, black, and just says John Silver right there. Is this embossed? I don't believe it is, but I will have to check once I actually get the cellophane all off. Yep, just says John Silver, right like that, just overlapping the gray just a little bit. And moving on to the bottom, we can see we get a pure black background, and it just says John Silver right there in the corner of the, well, side. And we can also see there's some text right here. That just says Högsta pris. Högsta pris, from what I can tell at least, means maximum price. And we can also see that to the side of that, there's a barcode right there. And then there's some numbers as well. I assume that's just like probably batch numbers or something like that kind of thing. But then under that, it says 82 SEK, Swedish krona, which means that the maximum price, with the Hogstapris, with that text combined with the 82 SEK, we can infer that the maximum price for this pack is 82 SEK, or Swedish krona, or about $8.52. $8.52? I think it's just $8.50, roughly $8.50 USD. I don't know the exact price, but yeah, that's the maximum price that this pack can be sold. We're just a little bit jumbled up. That's the maximum price that this pack can be sold for, from what I can tell, at least, which is pretty interesting. There's not many countries that actually print the exact price that is the maximum price that the pack of cigarettes is supposed to be sold for. That's pretty cool, if I do say so myself. I think I've only ever seen one other country do that, I want to say. I'm sure there's other countries out there that do a similar thing, but I've only ever actually tried cigarettes from one other country that do the same thing. Let me just put it that way. That was Pakistan. Pakistan had the actual price of cigarettes and the amount they're supposed to be sold for on the bottom of the pack, which was pretty cool, if I do say so myself, and same for Sweden as well. And I gotta admit, it's appreciated, because with that, you know, okay, this is the maximum price. Am I getting ripped off? Are they charging more? You know, just like that. And that's actually something that's super nice, I'm not gonna lie. Because sometimes you just walk into a place and you're like, man, I feel like I got overcharged for this pack. I feel like this was like $1 more than it would have been if I had gone somewhere else. I've had that happen to me personally, and I've been like, what? Why did I just pay $1 more for a pack when I could have gone next door and gotten me the pack for $1 less? It's one of those things where in the United States, cigarette pricing varies wildly from place to place, but in Sweden, I get the impression it might be more standardized than not. Although, of course, as somebody who's never been to Sweden, I don't know anything for sure. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to the packaging overall. Some interesting stuff, without a doubt. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get the cellophane all off now. And let's go ahead and, oh man, that's interesting. That is very interesting. There's something I'm very excited to show y'all. Let's go ahead and get the cellophane all off, and I'm gonna go ahead and put the cellophane in my backpack real quick. I'm just gonna go and open it up, throw it in. I'm gonna go and throw in this piece of paper as well. And I'm needing a sip of water real quick. So I'm gonna go and take one. Feeling much better now. Just got a little bit of water sitting on my lip. Just had to get it off. But overall, how does this pack look with the cellophane off? I gotta admit, it looks better, as is the case with most packs of cigarettes that aren't plain packaging. Overall, texture-wise, very much that of a, I'd have to say, pretty just normal feeling, slightly glossy printed paperboard. That's very much the texture of the packaging, in my personal opinion. Embossment down here, embossment on the other side, embossment on the top, nope. Embossment on the bottom, nope. Embossment on this side, nope. Embossment on this side, not from what I can tell. So just embossment on the, front and the back of the pack. But I'm just happy there's any embossment at all, and I certainly don't mind it by any means. But overall, the quality of the pack, gotta admit. Some tobacco is falling out of the pack. That's not great. All right, quality is, I'm gonna have to say quality of this pack is, yeah, there's literally tobacco falling out of the side right there. That's not very good. That's not quite a pack problem. I do suppose it's more of a cigarette problem. We'll find out what the issue with that is in just a minute once I get this all opened up and get one of the cigarettes out. But overall, I'm gonna have to say average quality for the pack itself. Not a bad quality by any means, just an average quality, same as most other hard packs of cigarettes made with paperboard. I'm not gonna lie, average quality for the packaging. But let's go ahead and now take a look at the design that was being covered up by the barcode. And there's one feature, there's one little design, there's one little tribute that I was not expecting. We can see, it just says a product of JTI Sweden. And then under that, it just says made in the EU. So it doesn't actually say that these are made in Sweden. It says they're made in the EU. But it is indeed a product of Japan Tobacco International, Sweden. Under that, it just says John Silver right there. And then under that, what does it say? It says 20 Class A cigarettes. Now, if you're not an American, that's pretty meaningless to you. And even if you are an American, that's pretty meaningless to you. But it's not meaningless to me. 20 Class A cigarettes in the United States is a tax designation that every cigarette that's sold in the United States today fits. there are technically two different classes of cigarettes, Class A and Class B cigarettes. Class A are a cigarette that are based on a certain amount of weight, and they're the lighter weight than Class B cigarettes, which are taxed higher and are heavier cigarettes. There were Class B cigarettes on the market up until the 1990s / maybe even up until the early 2000s, depending on who you ask. But the only cigarettes still on the market today are indeed Class A cigarettes. In the United States, at least, of course. Other countries, I'm sure they might have cigarettes that are considered to be Class B cigarettes, but in the United States, with the taxes and everything like that, it's just not super viable to sell Class B cigarettes anymore, hence why they don't exist anymore. Thing is, though, Class A cigarette tax designation is not a thing anywhere but the United States of America. However, over the years, I have found a variety of packs that say 20 Class A cigarettes on them, even though they're not an American pack of cigarettes. I've found a pack of Mexican cigarettes that said that on them. I've found a pack of, I think, Indonesian cigarettes that said them on them. And then I've also found, well, now this pack as well. And it says 20 Class A cigarettes. This is a cigarette meant for the Swedish market. I realize that this is an American blend cigarette, so they're certainly saying that to give off the impression that these are more American than not, even though this is a domestic brand cigarette that was first introduced in Sweden and is only sold in Sweden from what I know as well. But it's still pretty amusing that they're trying to show some sort of aspect of Americanism with the 20 Class A cigarette text right there. That is very, 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 very interesting to me. And I mean, like, most of the time when I see a cigarette with 20 Class A cigarettes written on it or something like that kind of thing, out of the 2 times I've seen it besides this pack, one of them was a pack of Chesterfields. And Chesterfields is a pack of American cigarettes. So it actually kind of makes sense for them to market them as being an American-ish cigarette and whatnot kind of thing, and to put 20 Class A cigarettes on the pack and everything like that. It really does make a little bit more sense for them to do that, just simply because, well, it's a Chesterfield. It's an American brand. Why wouldn't they market it as being an American cigarette, even if it's not, even if it's made in Mexico like it was? But the other 2 packs of cigarettes I've tried were not American brands and were never sold in America, which I just find really, really, really interesting. I'm not going to lie. I find that very interesting. John Silver cigarettes, I don't believe have ever been sold in America. And yes, John Silver as a brand is an American blend brand. But I do just find it very, very, very interesting that it says 20 Class A cigarettes on the pack just right there. That is all very interesting to me. I'm not gonna lie. Nerded out just a bit right there, but I do think without further ado, it is now time for me to go ahead and get this pack of cigarettes right here all opened up. And I think it's time for us to take a look at the inside of the lid and then to take a look at the foil itself. We can see the inside of the lid says something. I don't know exactly what, in all honesty, but it says something. It says, oh, do I want to try this? Oh, man. I'm going to try it. Denna product skal hålla högsta kvalitet. Skulle du inte vara helt nöjd? Returnera detta paket med innehåll till JTI Sweden. I'm butchering this so bad. I'm so sorry to any Swedes watching this video. I'm so sorry. I'm butchering this horribly. Konsumen contact. I know what that means. Consumer contact. Box 241 55 105 51 Stockholm. Consumer contact. And then it has a phone number as well. And that's pretty much all there is to this right here. Just basically talking about how to contact JTI Sweden and stuff like that if you have any complaints, I do suppose. That's my guess at least. Taking a look at the inside of the pack, though, there was a bit of tobacco kind of hanging out on the pack and whatnot. I might need to pack these down. I might actually... I'm just afraid if I don't pack them, the tobacco might all fall out of the cigarettes for some reason. I'm not exactly sure. So I just went ahead and packed them just in case, just to be careful. But let's go ahead and take a look at the cigarette insert itself, and we can see it's a pretty basic design for a cigarette insert, and it's just in a sort of black. It's just a black, basic cigarette insert, really nothing much going on. The foil itself, once again, is black as well. It was pressed a little bit so we can actually see the cigarette indents in the top of it, which is pretty cool if I do say so myself, but nothing too much interesting going on, no design or anything like that. Foilie on the outside. sort of papery on the inside, I'd have to say. Let's go ahead and pull it out real quick, and pulls out cleanly and satisfyingly. No complaints on my behalf. Go and put that in my backpack, can't be littering. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get a Swedish cigarette out of a pack for the first time, and let's go ahead and take a look at what these cigarettes actually look like, what they feel like, what the quality of them is like. And oh man, I think I am glad that I decided to pack these, because look at that, y'all. These, I think they might have needed to be packed. Take what I say with a grain of salt when I'm talking about body draw and airflow today. I want to acknowledge, because I did pack these, I pre-packed them. I don't normally do that when I'm reviewing cigarettes for the first time. Sometimes I'll pack a pack of cigarettes afterwards, but when I'm reviewing a pack of cigarettes, I want to smoke them as the manufacturer intended, but I was just afraid all the tobacco was going to fall out, and I didn't want to risk it, let me tell y'all what. But let's go ahead and smell this cigarette real quick. And overall, I'm getting a slightly papery, woodsy smell. With a little bit of nuttiness, a little bit of chocolate. Kind of smells like a mixture between like a cigarette from the UK and a cigarette from the United States, in all honesty. It kind of smells like a mixture of, well, those, frankly put. Just right off the bat, I am going to get another cigarette all out of the pack just to get a better idea of what these smell like. Okay, right out of the pack, it has a little bit more of a strong scent. I'd have to say I'm getting, ooh, it's interesting. It's interesting. It is still sort of a woodsy smell. I don't know exactly how to describe it. I think it's kind of like I'm getting somewhat of a like hazelnut smell, I want to say. Like almost sort of a Nutella, like chocolate smell. Yeah, I'd have to say smell-wise from this cigarette, I'm very much getting that of a slightly papery, slightly, I'd have to say woody, almost like, I'd have to say cedarwood scent with a little bit of, I'd have to say, like almost Nutella-like hazelnut, a little bit of chocolate, and I think a little bit of creaminess as well, and that's very much the smell I'm getting from the cigarette just initially. I do kind of think that the cedarwood and paper smell is possibly coming from the packaging itself and not from the actual tobacco. I'm going to continue holding this cigarette out of the pack, and I'm going to smell it again before we go ahead and actually get it lit up to find out if that smell dissipates or if it stays being there. And if it stays being there, it's probably just the smell of a cigarette. If it goes away, it was probably the smell of the pack, and the cigarette was probably in the pack for just a bit longer than not. Let's go ahead and take a look at the John Silver filtered cigarettes, though. And we can see it is a more basic look than not, nothing too insane by any means. Not that I expected anything particularly insane, but we can see a very classic looking cork style filter right there. And then under that, we get a white paper going all the way down, and a mosquito right there. Did I get him? I don't know if I did, but I did not get him, I don't think. I think he just flew away. Tried to get him, though. Tried to get that mosquito. But we can see, as said, cork style filter right there. And then right above that, we just get a normal white paper with horizontal lines going all the way across, all the way up the paper itself. And on that white paper in a sort of gray silver, with that I think is more meant to be black, more than likely. I think the ink was just probably running a bit dry with this cigarette in specific. But it just says John Silver right there on the cigarette itself, which is very much in the same exact font that we saw on the front of the packaging. Yep, just says John Silver right there. And overall, that is pretty much the look of the cigarette. As said, cork style filter, white paper with horizontal lines, John Silver right there. It's a more basic look than not, but not a bad look by any means, and it certainly is much more of a classic look than not, which I think is exactly what the brand is going for. Taking a look at the cork style filter, we can see that there is indeed one line of perforation. There are a decent amount of dots, not like an insane amount, but a decent amount of them. And the dots are, I will acknowledge, a bit bigger than not as well. So I am afraid that this cigarette might be a bit airy, but it could just be there to make this cigarette a little bit rougher. And since these are marketed as being a full flavored cigarette, I do think that might be exactly why they're there, and they're not really actually there for airflow. Or maybe it's meant to make the cigarette smoother. I'm not sure. I've never had one of these before. Taking a look, excuse me. taking a look at the blend on the inside of the cigarette, we can see it is very much that of a medium blend. There are some light aspects, there are some darker aspects, but nothing is particularly light nor particularly dark. It's all pretty much just medium, honestly. Like, there's some lighter aspects, some darker aspects, but nothing is like insanely dark or insanely light. It is more of a medium blend than not, without a doubt, which makes sense because this is supposed to be an American blend cigarette. Although I do expect some changes to have been made over the years, that is for sure. I don't expect this to taste like a cigarette from the United States, an American blend cigarette from the United States, I will acknowledge. Let's go ahead and smell this cigarette once again, though. I am still very much getting that sort of, I'd have to say, woodsy smell, but I'm not getting that sort of papery smell anymore, so I do think that papery smell was coming from the pack. But what I'm getting is very much that of a, I'd have to say, cedarwood smell with undertones of a sort of Nutella-like hazelnut, sort of creamy, almost sort of butteriness. With then under that maybe a little bit of chocolate. Maybe a little bit of chocolate. I'm not exactly sure. I could be wrong about that. But that's very much what I'm getting smell-wise from this cigarette, and I'd have to say overall quality-wise, this cigarette is pretty solid, besides the tobacco falling out, but packing it fixed that issue. Without further ado, I do suppose I should probably go ahead and take a sip of water real quick, and then after that, I should probably go ahead and actually get to smoking a Swedish cigarette for the first time, now shouldn't I? Excuse me. Get my lighter out of my pocket. Without further ado, y'all, let's go ahead and get a Swedish cigarette lit up for the first time, and let's go ahead and find out just how good or just how bad a Swedish cigarette actually is, based off this one experience at least. Yes, sir, and I'm saying. Well, hopefully one of those will do as a screenshot for the thumbnail of this video. We will find out. Worst case scenario, I can always grab myself another one now, can't I? But taste-wise so far, really nice. Definitely does taste similar-esque to an American blend cigarette, but not exactly the same. There certainly are some differences without a doubt, but the overall similar flavor profile is somewhat there. And I'd have to say, unsurprisingly, the most similar cigarette taste-wise I've had to this one, Lucky Strike Unfiltereds. Lucky Strike Unfiltereds are the most similar cigarette I've had to this one taste-wise. I'm not gonna lie. And when I'm saying Lucky Strike Unfiltereds, I mean the Lucky Strike Unfiltereds from the United States. And I say that's not a surprise because John Silver as a brand was inspired by the American brands that were brought over during and after World War II. And I'm sure a lot of those were Lucky Strikes. So I'm not terribly surprised that Lucky Strike may have inspired the flavor of this cigarette. I'm not terribly surprised that this kind of does still taste like a Lucky Strike Unfiltered from the United States today. Not exactly the same, don't get me wrong, but I can definitely see the inspiration, or taste the inspiration, I guess is really the right way of putting it. Very interesting. Overall, so far, seeming like a pretty solid quality cigarette. It's given me a nice hit, both in the mouth and in the throat. Body-wise, the body is pretty solid in my personal opinion, especially for the amount of perforation on the filter. I definitely have to say it's a medium to large size body, probably more on the large side. Excuse me, that. Testing the body ripped my throat apart. I'm not gonna lie, I need a sip of water. My throat's been a little bit dry today. The weather's been changing a lot in my local area, so I think that's probably why. This cigarette is burning a bit faster than not. It's certainly not a slow smoking cigarette by any means, but that is what it is, not a big deal. But overall, I'd have to say the body is definitely bigger than not the biggest body I've ever seen, but it's definitely on the larger side for a full flavored filtered cigarette like this one, especially with the amount of perforation this one has on the filter. And airflow-wise, even with the packing, the airflow is perfectly fine. I figure without packing, it might be a little bit loose, so I'd have to say the John Silver filtered cigarettes from Sweden are probably something you do want to pack. It's just probably what I would personally do with them. Let me just put it that way. Nothing you have to do, I will acknowledge, but I do think it's something that I would personally want to do. Draw is very much that of a medium satisfying draw, and on the heavy side, it's a bit more on the light side, I gotta admit. It is nonetheless, though, a medium draw that has a nice satisfaction to it, without a doubt. Yeah, I'd have to say, medium draw. Really not a lot of airiness coming into the draw either, so I really do think that the perforation is put on the filter for either smoothness or for roughness, not really to make the cigarette come across as being more airy. I think the perforation definitely does less than you might initially expect, that is for sure. But yeah, I'd have to say, perfectly fine airflow, medium draw, and that's the first cigarette right there. I'm gonna have another one. I haven't covered the taste, the strength, the roughness, any of that yet. I still need to cover all that. But overall, my first experience with a Swedish cigarette, gotta admit, has been more solid than not. Not the greatest cigarette I've ever tried, but certainly not a bad one, without a doubt. And I'm just trying to get the rest of the tobacco out, which is still burning. There we go. And I just wanted to get that out so I could take a look at where the filter actually starts. And the filter starts, well, the corkstop paper did indeed burn down just a little bit. And actually, interestingly enough, no, I was mistaken. Okay, so the perforation is towards the top of the filter right there, not towards the bottom. And the filter itself starts, I'd have to say, like the top of the corkstop paper is probably right about there where the top of my finger is. It's probably round about the top of the corkstop paper, and the filter starts just a little bit below that, about, I'd have to say, a centimeter from the perforation itself. And overall, the filter is not particularly big. It is a smaller filter than not, although it's certainly not the smallest I've ever seen. And it definitely does get you a little bit more mushy than not as well, without a doubt. At the very bottom, once you finish smoking your cigarette, definitely gets a little bit mushy without a doubt. And we can see the tar itself is predominantly in the middle, so the perforation, while it might not be super effective while you're smoking itself, while you're smoking the cigarette, it might not come across as if the perforation is doing its, excuse me, I'm getting word, I'm just trying to think how I want to put this. While you're smoking, it might not come across as if the perforation is really doing all that much. It comes across as just a normal cigarette kind of thing. I think the perforation is just there to kind of lighten up the draw just a little bit and to probably make the cigarette either a little bit smoother or a little bit rougher. But after the cigarette, when we look at the tar spread, we can indeed tell that the tar is predominantly in the middle with a lighter area around the edges, and so we can tell that the perforation is doing its job more so than not. And yeah, that was the first cigarette. Overall, how am I feeling about Swedish cigarettes based off that one cigarette? Well, I gotta admit, the John Silver cigarettes, they tasted pretty nice. They weren't the highest quality in the world, I will acknowledge. Not the most insane quality I've ever had, but not like unsmokable quality by any means. About the same as something like, let's say, a Marlboro or Camel or something like that kind of thing. I'd have to say probably right in the middle of a Marlboro or Camel. Definitely better quality than Marlboros, but not quite as good of quality as American Camels in my personal opinion, and definitely not good as good of quality as something like, let's say, the Lucky Strike unfiltered from the United States, but of about equivalent quality to Lucky Strikes in the United States. The filtered ones, that is. But yeah, overall, not bad quality cigarettes, but also not the greatest quality cigarettes in the world, just about average in my personal opinion. And overall, I'm like, I gotta admit, nice flavor, nice strength. I'm feeling a little buzzed right now. And overall, not a bad smoke at all. Now I'll acknowledge the John Silver cigarettes, while they are a very iconic Swedish cigarette, without a doubt, this definitely does taste a little bit American. It's American blend cigarette, of course. So I don't really feel like this is super respective of what a lot of the other cigarettes sold on the Swedish market are like. Could be. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe American blend cigarettes are the standard in Sweden. I'm not exactly sure. But either way, very interesting, and it's giving me a better impression than not of what Swedish cigarettes are. And I am thinking that Swedish cigarettes, based off this one experience at least, are probably solid, average quality cigarettes that provide a nice flavor and probably burn a bit faster than not. And that's kind of what I'm thinking they're like, just based off this one experience. I need another one, though. I do need another one, and I'm going to have another one of these, of course. So let's go and get another one all out of the pack, and let's go ahead and get it lit up and try to figure out what the taste of the John Silver filtered cigarettes from Sweden are actually like. I feel like I got a burp. Oh, man. Excuse me. That was satisfying. I haven't even had any alcohol today or drinks today besides water. That was a good burp, though. No complaints on my behalf. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get this cigarette all lit up, and let's go ahead and get back to smoking a Swedish cigarette. Yes, sir, you know what I'm saying? So I've already covered body, I've already covered draw, and I've already covered airflow. So now I want to cover taste, roughness, and smoothness, and strength. And overall, roughness, smoothness-wise, I'm thinking this is very much that of a low to mid 3 out of 4, round about a 3.2 to 3.3 out of 4. Certainly not the roughest cigarette I've ever had, but definitely does have some roughness to it. I'd have to say it's of equivalent roughness to something like, let's say, a mosquito. I'd have to say it's of equivalent roughness to something like, let's say, a Lucky Strike filtered in the United States, or maybe a Marlboro Red in the United States. So yeah, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4 out of 4. I feel like is about right for the roughness and smoothness of this cigarette. And I'd say strength-wise, about the same. Probably about a 3.3, 3.4 roughness, strength-wise. Making this very much that of a full-flavored cigarette as I expected. Not the strongest full-flavored cigarette in the world by any means, but definitely more full-flavored than not. And I'd have to say these are, actually, you know what? I'm gonna actually place these strength-wise as a 3.5 out of 4. Because I actually do feel like they're stronger than Marlboro Reds. And of more equivalent strength to... No. I'm gonna say 3.4, 3.5 out of 4. About the same strength as Marlboro Reds, but maybe a little bit stronger. And about the same strength as Lucky Strike Reds from the United States. Yeah, 3.4, 3.5 out of 4 strength-wise, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4 roughness and smoothness-wise. Very much standard full-flavored cigarette territory. But what do these cigarettes actually taste like? Well, let's find out. And I gotta admit, they taste as they smell. Getting a little bit of spice. It's kind of like a sort of cedarwood-like spice. Getting a decent chunk of a sort of almost Nutella, hazelnut-like flavor, with a little bit of butteriness in there as well, without a doubt. And, am I getting anything else? I don't think so. Maybe a little bit of chocolate. I'm not sure about that. I'm gonna have to think about that. I'll let y'all know what the flavor of this cigarette really is after I finish it, because I'm gonna have to continue just trying to determine for a minute. Definitely get me buzzed, though. Not gonna deny that. Flavor-wise, it's nice. Okay, all right. I'm starting to notice a little bit more now. I'm starting to get a little bit of brown sugar sweetness as well. I wouldn't say that these are the exact same or are insanely similar to modern American blend cigarettes sold on the American market. And I would still have to say that they are most similar, and not exactly the same. Not exactly the same, but most similar flavor-wise to the Lucky Strike unfiltered cigarettes from the United States. But they're not exactly the same. There's some differences. One, I'm not really getting any sort of a chocolate taste. There might be just the tiniest bit of coca in there, but not much. But I am definitely getting a sort of hazelnut, almost sort of Nutella, sweet butter taste with a little bit of brown sugar, and I'd have to say a little bit of cedarwood as well. Overall, I gotta admit, the John Silver cigarettes, they're cigarettes I don't mind without a doubt. They're cigarettes I do not mind. Not the greatest cigarettes I've ever had, not the best cigarettes ever, by any means, but certainly cigarettes I don't mind smoking, and certainly cigarettes I will enjoy smoking the rest of the pack of. What are my final thoughts on what the flavor of the John Silver filtered cigarettes from Sweden is actually like? What do I think the flavor of this pack of cigarettes right here actually is? Well, I think the top flavor is trying to think of the right way to describe it. Okay. I'm going to have to say it starts off as being that of a slightly spicy, cedarwood-like flavor, and that continues all the way through the cigarette, but it gets a little bit more mild as you continue smoking and as you continue noticing more flavors. But it starts off, the flavor of the John Silver filtered cigarette starts off as having that of a more, I'd have to say, yeah, the flavor starts off having that of a more spicy, cedarwood-like flavor than not, that gets more mild as you continue smoking. And as that flavor gets more mild, you start to notice a flavor of a sort of Nutella-like hazelnut butter with undertones of brown sugar and maybe the tiniest bit of, like, I'd have to say dark chocolate as well. Yeah, I'd have to say, now that I'm really noticing the aftertaste and really paying attention to it, there's definitely a little bit of a sort of dark chocolate slash baking coca in there as well, and a bug just flew into my ear. I'd have to say there's definitely a little bit of that in there. So yeah, overall, flavor-wise, I think the John Silver cigarettes from Sweden have a mildly spicy, cedarwood-like flavor that then dissipates and goes into a slightly sweeter than not, Nutella-like hazelnut butter flavor with an undertone of brown sugar, with then an undertone of a little bit of dark chocolate slash baking coca. And that's very much what the flavor of these cigarettes is like, if you ask me. Yeah, I'd have to say that's about accurate. I'd have to say that's as accurate as I'm gonna get for this video today. Overall, definitely, I still think it. I said this when I first got them lit up, and I still think this now. The most comparable cigarette I've tried to the John Silver cigarettes from Sweden are the Lucky Strike unfiltered cigarettes from the United States. They're not exactly the same. There are differences, but I can't help but shake the feeling that Lucky Strikes in specific are what inspired John Silver cigarettes from Sweden. And the taste is just, I would have to say, the most similar to the Lucky Strike unfiltered from the United States. That's really the most comparable cigarette I have to these right here. Interesting. Very interesting without a doubt. Very interesting smokes. Very tasty smokes. Very nice smokes. And smokes that I certainly am going to enjoy smoking the rest of the pack of. And a pack that I would buy with my own money without a doubt as well. What are my final thoughts on the John Silver cigarettes from Sweden? I like them. I am going to enjoy smoking the rest of the pack, and I would also buy a pack of the John Silver cigarettes with my own money in the future if I was to ever visit Sweden, which I do want to do, I will acknowledge. But there are some things to acknowledge. The John Silver filtered cigarettes, they're not the highest quality cigarettes in the world. They're not the most amazing quality cigarettes in the world. They're not as good of high quality, they're not as, I'm getting more just jumbled up, but they're not as high quality of cigarettes as American Spirits. However, they are equivalent quality to something like, let's say, a Seneca from the United States, to something like, let's say, a Camel from the United States. And now having smoked a second one, I'd have to say they're higher quality than Marlboros in the United States, and have about equivalent quality to something like, let's say, I'd have to say, Lucky Strike filtered cigarette. Although it has been a couple years since I've had one of those, so take my words with a grain of salt. But I'd have to say the John Silver cigarettes definitely have equivalent quality to something like, let's say, a Seneca from the United States or a Camel from the United States, without a doubt. And a little bit lower quality than something like, let's say, the Lucky Strike unfiltered, but not by an insane margin by any means. So really, the biggest negative of the John Silver cigarettes from Sweden is just the quality, which is not bad quality. I'm not going to call it bad quality. I'm going to say that these are most certainly better quality than not. But they're not the most insane quality cigarettes by any means, I will acknowledge. They work, they get the job done, they provide you with a quality cigarette, but nothing insane by any means, and I think that's really the right way of putting it. Overall, though, even with the quality, I like the John Silver cigarettes. The quality does not bother me to an insane degree, and when I'm talking about the quality, I don't mean that I'm getting a sort of chemical taste or an additive taste. I'm just talking really, in all honesty, about paper taste. I'm getting a little bit of a paper taste in there, not really much. It could just be the sort of woodsy taste kind of messing me up just a little bit as well. But overall, I just don't get the impression that John Silver cigarettes are the most insane quality thing in the world by any means, nor do I think they're meant to be. I think they're meant to be a cigarette for the people that is available to the people for a reasonable price. And that's exactly, from what I can tell, what they are, if I had to guess at least. But overall, yeah, solid quality, but not the most insane quality in the world. Good taste, very solid flavor profile, but nothing insane. Tastes like a Lucky Strike unfiltered, not to the fullest degree, but a little bit more so than not. It's the most similar cigarette to the John Silvers I've tried so far, at least. And overall, a pack that I would not mind buying with my own money, and a pack that I'm going to enjoy smoking the rest of the pack of. I don't mind the John Silver cigarettes from Sweden, I can confirm. I actually like them a little bit more so than not. They're not my favorite cigarette ever, but I do enjoy them. I did enjoy smoking the two I had today, and they're very solid if you ask me. Overall, do I think the John Silver cigarettes are representative of other cigarettes sold in Sweden? Well, I think it depends. Are there different blend cigarettes sold in Sweden that are more considered to be a Swedish blend cigarette? Or are all cigarettes sold in Sweden today based on John Silver cigarettes? Because John Silver cigarettes, from what I can tell, are just that iconic. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if a lot of the brands today are kind of taking a note from John Silver's book. I'm not sure. I've never been to Sweden. I haven't smoked a lot of Swedish cigarettes, of course. But I'm kind of getting the idea that I do think John Silver cigarettes are probably more representative of what other cigarettes on the Swedish market are like. And so I do feel like, overall, Swedish cigarettes are probably pretty solid. At least at this price point. Of course, lower price point, lower quality is generally the way it goes, and higher price point, higher quality. But overall, the John Silver cigarettes have given me a good impression of what Swedish cigarettes may be like, and I feel like they've possibly given me a all-right idea of what Swedish cigarettes are like as well. Overall, what is the rating I want to give the John Silver filtered cigarettes from Sweden? I'd have to say I want to give this pack a rating of 3 out of 4. 3 out of 4. Very much a solid 3.5 out of 4, to be precise. Yeah, 3.5 out of 4 for the John Silver filtered cigarettes from Sweden. 3.5 out of 4 just means it's a pack that I'm going to enjoy smoke the rest of, and it's a pack that I would buy with my own money, but it's not like the most insane, amazing thing of all time. It's a solid cigarette that I enjoy, but it's not like a masterpiece. It's good. I'll smoke it again. I'll smoke it. I'll buy it without a doubt, but it's nothing insane. It's not the best thing ever. It's not the best thing I've ever tried, but it's still much more solid than not. And that's kind of what I think about them. They're solid smokes and definitely deserving of a 3.5 out of 4 in my personal opinion. Hope you guys have enjoyed watching this video where I smoked and reviewed a Swedish cigarette for the first time. This has been an educational and informative experience for me, and I hope you guys have enjoyed watching, and I hope you guys feel the same way. If you guys have enjoyed watching this video, of course, please make sure to like and subscribe for more content. I have my Instagram, my book, my merch, my P.O. Box, and my other channels all in the description down below. Go check them all out. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, y'all. Till the next one, stay safe and peace, and have a great one. Yes, sir, you know what I'm saying?